Welcome, Prof. Stephen Krauss and Prof. Haslinda Abdullah to the Zoom meeting. And also welcome to Ms. Maya Devianti as our moderator. With us also, there is Prof. Maila Dini Husni Rahim as the head of Center for International Cooperation, the one that leads this conference. We are still have sometimes before we start our session today. A little brief about this session. This session will start at 9 Jakarta time and will end at 11 a.m. And then our moderator, Ms. Maya Devianti, will lead the discussion and the session. First from Professor Stephen Krauss and then Professor Haslinda Abdullah. There will be also discussion session, and at the end we are going to have a question and answer and conclusion. Now we are going to play again the video profile of the conference one more time, and then we are going to start afterward. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, everyone. It is truly a pleasure to welcome all of you, distinguished guests, esteemed speakers, and participations from around the world to the GreenThink International Conference on Innovative Interdisciplinary Science for an Inclusive and Sustainable Future. Today's themes, Towards Resilient Societies, the synergy of religion, education, health, science, and technologies, embodies our collective commitment to shaping a more inclusive and sustainable future. This conference is organized by the Center for International Cooperation, led by its director, Professor Maila Dini Husni Rahim, PhD, and is proudly supported by the Institute of Research and Community Empowermen under the direction of Professor Amelia Fauzia, PhD. We also extend our gratitude to Universitas Islam Negeri Syarif Hidayatullah Jakarta, led by our rector, Professor Asep Saifuddin Jahar, PhD, for their unwavering support. We are excited and humbled by the participation of thought leaders and innovators from across the globe. Your contribution through the papers you've submitted will be published by the Taylor Francis, ensuring that your work reaches a wider audience. Let's use today as an opportunity to learn from one another, collaborate, and inspire new ideas. Thank you all for being part of this important event. Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to begin session 1, Building Resilient Societies, the role of education and youth empowerment. In this session, we will explore the critical role that education and youth empowerment play in creating stronger, more adaptable communities. We are honored to have with us two distinguished experts who will share their valuable insight. Professor Stephen Krauss from the University of Missouri, USA, and then Professor Haslinda Abdullah from Universiti Putra Malaysia. This session will be moderated by Ms. Maya Devianti, PhD, a dedicated academic with extensive expertise in this field. Before we proceed, let us take a moment to introduce her with a short video profile. Thank you for that wonderful introduction to our moderator. The session will run from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Jakarta time, and we encourage you to actively engage with our speakers by submitting your question through the Zoom platform. Now, without further ado, I hand it over to our moderator, Ms. Maya Devianti, PhD, to lead us through this engaging session. Ms. Maya Devianti, the time is yours.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me well? Yes. Okay, loud and clear. Thank you very much. Okay, good morning, good evening for Dr. Krauss, I guess. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome to the first session of this conference. This first session will deal with the topic building a resilient society, the role of education and youth empowerment. First of all, I'd like to extend my warmest regards to the chair of the committee, Professor Maila Rahim, PhD, and also all the committee who has prepared this conference. Now, the term resilient is very prominent currently. It is a sexy topic that the term itself has been attached to many other concepts For example, to name a few, we have climate resilience, urban resilience, academic resilience, community resilience, and now we are talking about resilient society. I'm sure because this is very interesting topic that many people are interested to talk about this. Now, in this session, you'll be hearing a presentation. Oh yeah, I'd like to also give my warmest regard to the two distinguished speakers, Dr. Stephen Krauss and also Professor Haslinda Abdullah. You'll be hearing a presentation from Dr. Stephen Krauss from University of Missouri, USA. Before we hear about, and also from Professor Haslinda, before we hear about their presentation, the committee will play their background. Let's have a watch. Okay, thank you very much. Now, without further ado, let us invite Professor Stephen Krauss to give his talk about from resilience to thriving, the 4H Thrive model. The floor is yours, Professor.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum and selamat pagi to everyone there. I want to thank Prof. Maila and her team, and Maya, our moderator tonight, and her team for inviting me for the GreenThink conference. It feels like I'm back in Nusantara, even though I'm not back in Nusantara. I'm sort of, I feel like I'm back there, even though I'm not. I spent 22 years there, and so it was wonderful. And so it's nice to see familiar faces. So thank you very much for inviting me. My talk tonight in relation to the theme of building resilient societies, the role of education needs empowerment. The title of my talk is From Resilience to Thriving, the 4H Thrive model. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the work I'm doing now in the United States in the field of positive youth development. And I don't know if any of you have heard of the youth development program in America called 4H, but that's the program that I do a lot of my work in now. And so in terms of resilience in education, I'm going to speak mostly about informal and non-formal education as a way of building resilience and thriving in young people. Sorry, I have to change my screen here. Okay. So what I hope to touch on in my 20 to 30 minutes is just briefly go through the variety of global challenges facing young people. And I do mean global. Having been in Malaysia for a long time and then coming back to the United States, I fully realize that many of the challenges that our young people are facing are truly global. They are no longer limited to a single jurisdiction or area of the world. And then we'll talk a little bit about educating for resilience and what that means and how what we should be focusing on when we aim to educate young people for resilience. And then from resilience to thriving, what does that mean? What is thriving? And I'm gonna frame that around the positive youth development approach. And then lastly, I'm going to talk about the work that we do in 4-H called the Thrive Model. It's a practice model. And so in the last portion of the talk, I'm going to sort of explain how we go from theory about building resilience in young people to actual practice in youth organizations from the context of 4-H in the United States. So firstly, some global challenges. I think no surprises, I'm sure, when you see these challenges up on the screen. Health and mental health is a major challenge, and it's interesting that in the US, our young people here lead the world in obesity rates as just one health indicator. When I was in Malaysia, Malaysia led the Southeast Asian region in obesity rates. And so it's interesting to see that the same social indicator is of such a serious nature among young people on totally opposite sides of the world. Mental health, I think everyone's aware of the mental health crisis that the entire youth world is facing. Education, in terms of educational quality and access to education. Unemployment for young people is still a very big issue in many countries. And in many countries, young people are hitting unemployment rates from 30 to 50%. Family dysfunction and dissolution is another issue, of course. Climate anxiety. This is something that we see in a lot of the developed countries in the Western Hemisphere, this idea of climate anxiety, where young people have this sense of impending doom about the future of the planet. And then the all-important issue of purpose and meaning, and how young people derive a sense of meaning in a meaningless type of world. So these are some of the global challenges that our young people are facing. I don't think anybody would disagree with those, I'm sure. One of the things that's becoming more common, and we read more about it every day, is something called adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs. And these have been linked to tremendous amounts of trauma in young people. And it's cumulative trauma. So from the experiences at a very early age in, for example, homes where there's physical, emotional, or sexual abuse, or physical or emotional neglect. We see household dysfunction relating or causing mental illness. We see mothers treated violently, divorce, substance abuse, incarcerated relatives. This is the dissolution of the family that we see in so many places. Of course, those types of things tend to be higher in the Western world. And scholars are now realizing that these types of experiences are one of the main sources behind a lot of the stress, anxiety, and trauma that young people are facing as they age and get older. And these traumatic experiences, these ACEs, they have tremendous impacts on young people's both their psychology as well as their physiology. Okay, and they lead to a variety of negative outcomes like loss of impulse control, difficulties in learning and remembering, inabilities to focus, anxiety, hopelessness, just a variety of negative outcomes. All right. And we are seeing more and more research coming out every day that's marrying the two, the biological and physiological aspects of ACEs with the psychosocial aspects of ACEs, and sort of understanding them more holistically now. So that's in a couple minutes, in a nutshell, really, some of the global challenges that our young people are facing. And so it calls into question the need for resilience. We need young people who can be resilient in the face of these myriad challenges. So resilience is essentially the ability to adapt and thrive in the face of adversity. Okay. It's been studied for a long time. A nice definition that I like is what you see on the screen there, the capacity of young people to navigate their way to the resources they need during crises and their ability to negotiate for these resources to be provided in meaningful ways. So it's young people's ability to navigate their way to resources. In other words, resources are not only external, they're also internal. So these intrinsic resources that young people acquire, they build, and then they can navigate and access when they need to, right? So it's a way of offsetting these states or these situations where they face trauma and challenges in their lives. Scholars, especially in the prevention sciences, have sort of boiled down what makes young people resilient as in the language of what's called protective factors. So the protective factors to face challenges. And as you can see, when they're surrounded by a variety of life challenges, behavioral challenges, it's those things in the middle that sort of keep young people resilient. And if you look at those indicators, they're not the kind of indicators that our sort of public or formal education system can provide. Things like proper nutrition, emotional support, social activities, adequate sleep, skill development, physical activity. We're talking about a lifestyle, a healthy lifestyle, that many young people will get these in the family. And if they don't get them in the family, where are they getting them? Skills that they need nowadays to navigate a very complex world. Proper nutrition. We don't talk about that enough. We don't talk about adequate sleep or even exercise as protective factors against all the different challenges that they're facing. Okay, so these are actually protective factors. So how do we educate in a way that ensures that young people are getting or developing these protective factors? And that's what makes young people resilient. And so this is what that kind of an education has to look like. So one of the major assets, protective factors that scholars point to is the existence of safe, nurturing relationships with adults and peers. So if we look at the literature or the world of positive youth development, one of the things that you'll find in every positive youth development program is an emphasis, sometimes an overemphasis on safe, nurturing, supportive relationships. Okay. And you'll find this in almost any literature. All right. It is the crux, it is the foundation of resilience. And it's what a lot of young people lack. So when we talk about resilience, going from resilience to positive outcomes for young people, in the world of positive youth development, we talk about this idea of thriving. Okay. And so I'm going to just let the late Dr. Peter Benson talk a little bit about thriving just for about 2 minutes. Dr. Peter Benson was the founder of what's called the Search Institute, which is a very famous research institute in the United States. And they coined the term SPARKS. They coined the term developmental assets. They did a lot of the foundational research in the field of positive youth development that we know of today. And he gave this really amazing talk about sparks. And I'm going to explain what sparks are in a minute, but I want to just let him talk for about 2 minutes and just to give you an idea of what thriving is all about.
$80 million. That's the number of children in the United States from ages 0 to 18. 80 million. 80 million gems waiting to blossom, to bloom, to be engaged, to be seen, to be known, to be put into play. 80 million gems. What's our vision for America's kids? Well, you know what? We hardly ever talk about it. Is the vision to keep them safe? Is the vision to keep them out of trouble? Is the vision to keep them in school? Those are all management and control ideas. not very compelling. What is our vision for America's kids? So, because I love to go around and interview people, it's about everywhere I am in the world, particularly in the United States, I do like to ask adults, what is your highest aspiration for our young? Some interesting things happen. No one has ever said, oh, this child of mine, my fondest wish is that they will ace statewide benchmark math and science tests when they're 16. I've never heard anybody say, oh, my fondest wish is that this young person will help make America more competitive in the global economy. No, when you actually listen to people's statements about their dreams for our kids, you hear a very different language. Kids who experience joy, kids who are connected and engaged, kids who fall in love with their life and all of life, kids with kindness and generosity, kids who are happy, kids who contribute. That, my friends, is the language of human thriving. And it's the language of quality, isn't it? Not the language of quantity. Kids of joy, happiness, connection, engagement, fulfillment, kindness, compassion, generosity.
Okay, so the language of thriving is about those highest aspirations that we have for our young people. So if we want young people to achieve and thrive, essentially, we need to build resilience in them, okay? And so how do we create this culture of thriving for youth? Well, many successful programs, not only in the United States, but around the world, are talking the language of thriving, practicing the language of thriving, using what's called a positive youth development approach. And for those of you who are not familiar with the PYD approach, PYD is based on an intentional process that promotes positive outcomes for young people, as Dr. Peter Benson spoke of, those positive outcomes, those aspirations, by providing opportunities, relationships, and support for youth so that young people themselves can fully participate in their own development. It gives them a sense of agency to pursue positive pathways in life. The PYD approach starts with a mindset. Okay. And for some people, this is a very different mindset than what they're used to hearing, because it's a mindset of, again, thriving, where young people are seen as contributors to families and communities, not as burdens, where they're seen as talented, resourceful, and possessing strengths, not as problems, where they're seen as active agents who influence and are influenced by their environments, not as needing to be controlled. Youth are continually developing, and there are normative expectations in transition. They're neither children nor adults. Okay, so they're in development. And as James Cote, his formulation, his kind of conceptualization of this idea of youthhood, I think, is very important in relation to that last point about young people being in development and not being children or adults. They occupy their own space, which we could call youthhood, which is not reliant on any particular age per se. It is a phase of the life course which may differ according to culture, location, and setting. The six C's of thriving are those outcomes that we aim and hope to see in our young people when we're engaged in a PYD approach. Things like competence, social, cognitive, vocational success, and capability. Okay, confidence. Thriving young people are those with confidence. They have self-esteem, a stable identity. They have a future orientation. They have hope for the future. They have connections. They have relationships with people and organizations and institutions. So they're not in isolation. They're not alienated from their communities. They have strong character. And this is where the sort of religious and spiritual aspect of thriving plays a very big part. The development of strong character, self-control, young people who have that ability to control themselves. They have positive behavior, respect for others. They have strong morality and value systems. They're caring and compassionate people. They have empathy. They identify with others. They can take other people's perspectives and respect them. And they are those that make positive contributions to their communities and to their societies. So they do not neglect others, and they focus on those outside of themselves. And one of the key ways that this occurs is through what are called developmental relationships. All right. And these are the features and research that's been done, which has been spearheaded by the Search Institute and others around the country, has sort of identified the 5 elements of what are called developmental relationships. These are the relationships that allow thriving to occur, and each one has essential actions. Okay, so the 5 elements are expressing care. So if I'm an adult working with a young person, if I'm a mentor or I'm a teacher, or I'm a coach, or I'm an ustaz, or I'm a parent even, and I want to promote thriving in the young person or the child that I'm working with, these are the 5 elements that I really need to keep in mind. Expressing care, challenging growth, providing support, sharing power, and expanding possibilities. Now, let's break those down a little bit more carefully. Expressing care is showing young people that they matter. So listening, being dependable, believing in them, encouraging them. Challenging growth, pushing them to keep getting better, expecting the best, and holding them accountable for it. Okay, reflecting on failures, stretching them, pushing them beyond their limits sometimes, depending on the young person, if that's what they need. Providing support, helping them complete tasks and achieving goals, helping them navigate, empowering them, advocating for them, setting boundaries, which is something that a lot of people lack nowadays, especially when it comes to the online world. They have no boundaries in how they engage in online world. Share power, give them voice, treat them with respect, include them in decision-making, collaborate with them towards achieving goals, and let them lead whenever possible. Expanding possibilities, connecting them to people and places that broaden their horizons and that broaden their world. Inspiring them. And what young people that have these experiences often talk about is how inspired they were to engage in new activities. Research done by the Search Institute showed that 83% of the adults that they surveyed in their survey of 15,000 adults reported being intentional about building developmental relationships with young people, but only 46% of young people felt that they were experiencing developmental relationships with adults. So adults think they may be doing it, but they're actually not. So this all sounds very nice. It's a nice, very, very nice looking theory. Those 5 components and the 6 C's. But what does it look like in practice? Is there a organization out there that's actually putting thriving into practice? Well, there actually is, and it's the one that I work for. And it's called 4H. Okay, so from theory to practice, the 4H Thrive model. The Thrive model, and I'm going to explain in a minute, but the Thrive model is the model that we use. It's a national practice-based model that we use when we implement the 4H program throughout the country. And so what is 4H? 4H is a national youth development organization. It's the largest youth development organization in the United States. It's been around for over 100 years. And it serves over 5 million young people in the US. And that includes thousands upon thousands of adult volunteers that make the program go. And you can see the mission of 4H is very straightforward and very simple. Engaging youth as valued, contributing members of their communities in partnership with caring adults. So youth-adult partnership, the developmental relationships part is part and parcel of what 4H is about. The 4 H's stand for head, hands, heart, and health. And here you can see what each of those mean. Okay, so the head, clearer thinking to promote character. The hands, larger service by encouraging partnerships and engagement and community service. Heart, greater loyalty by embracing diversity and inclusion while encouraging and supporting innovation, youth leadership and futures. And then health, better living by supporting youth to become healthy and productive members of society. So these are the 4 core principles of what 4H is all about. I'm not going to go through this. This is some of the history, but just to show you that it's been around for over 100 years, and the basic mission has stayed the same. has remained. The development of youth as individuals and as responsible, productive members of the community in which they live. Okay, that's essentially what it's about. It's very much an agricultural-based program. Many of the activities that young people engage in 4-H are agricultural-based. It's based on the idea of sparks. Okay, and what are sparks? Sparks are tapping into young people's inherent strengths and interests to set them on this path of thriving. And so the way 4-H works is it's got this massive catalog of projects that young people choose to engage in out of school time. Okay, so this is on weekends at night. And the projects are the projects are all led by volunteers, adult volunteers. Okay, so it is a very unique program. It's a developmental space where young people and adults come together to focus on mutual sparks, things that they're both interested in. And young people do projects, and they have the opportunity to present those projects in state and county fairs where they get judged. And so there's a lot of goal setting. There's a lot of friendly competition. There's a lot of skill development and skill building. And young people are pursuing their sparks, those things that they're interested in. This is the 4-H thriving model. This is our practice model. This is the model, we call it the flower because it looks like a flower. And this is the model that we use. And this is evidence-based model. It came out of many, many years of research. But essentially what the thriving model is all about is it starts with strong developmental contexts, which are the 4-H programs. And the 4-H programs, we focus on 4 main elements, which is the sparks, which I just mentioned, young people's interests, inherent interests and passions, and what they want to pursue. They make those decisions on their own, what they choose to pursue. Sense of belonging is very strong because it's driven by adults who are often parents and communities. And so it's a family and community and youth sort of model of how program is conducted, which builds a very strong sense of belonging. Okay, so young people with their peers, with their friends, their parents, and their communities are involved in these ongoing projects. They build very strong relationships, especially with adults, and this is where the developmental relationships and the youth-adult partnerships come in, where young people try to give the youth in the programs as many opportunities for leadership as possible, providing them with voice to make decisions. They have youth councils, they have state councils, county councils, many, many different leadership opportunities for young people to engage in. And all this leads to engagement. And the thrive part is the social and emotional and cognitive learning that occurs in the programs. Okay, so this is the process. Okay, developmental contexts are those elements, those 4 elements, but the process of how young people thrive, what it takes to the actual process of thriving is in this type of learning. And that includes things like growth mindset. Okay, when they face challenges, the adults are there to support them to overcome those challenges, and they learn a lot of problem solving skills. They learn to be open to new challenges and discovery. They get taken out of their comfort zones all the time by engaging in projects that they're not familiar with, learning new skills. It gives them a strong sense of hopeful purpose for the future, which is something that our young people really need. It has a very strong pro-social orientation. They do a lot of community service work. Most of the projects are in the community, based in the community. They develop a sense of transcendent awareness, which is for religious people, that's a somewhat more of a religious sense. For others, it's just a sense that goes beyond the sense of self. Okay. And then positive emotions, it's a lot of fun. Okay. So they learn while they have fun, and they get to set goals and achieve them and manage goals. All the projects are structured, and they have timelines, and they have goals that they try to achieve. And so it's all these different elements that have come about through a lot of research that have sort of defined what thriving is in the context of 4-H. And this is what leads to these, I'm going to skip this one. This is what leads to these developmental outcomes that we see from the programs. So they develop positive academic attitudes, social competence, personal standards, connection with others, personal responsibility, and they learn to be contributors to society. Ultimately, in the long term, what we hope to see from our 4-Hers once they finish is academic and vocational success, civic engagement, employability and economic stability, and happiness and well-being. These are sort of the long-term outcomes that the program aims to achieve. I'm going to just skip this because I'm almost out of time. But I just want to quickly talk about some of the data. So some of the research that we've done on 4-H across the country shows that it is indeed an effective model. Longitudinal studies that have been done on 4-H show that 4-Hers are 4 times more likely to give back to their communities, twice as more likely to make healthier choices, and twice as more likely to participate in STEM activities than their peers. They're 4 times more likely to, they're 1.9 times more likely, almost twice as likely to get better grades in school. They tend to be more engaged academically, and they're 2 times more likely to report high engagement in school. So not only that they do well, but they also like going to school and feel that a sense of engagement in school. In some of the qualitative research that we've done with both youth as well as the adult volunteers in the program, the adults actually say a lot of really amazing things. When we ask them, for example, what's their most significant 4-H volunteer experience, we get things like this. As an advisor to our County Junior Leaders Program group, it has been great helping them figure out both the successes and the failures. Okay, so this is that idea of growth mentality, growth mindset. The realization of these kids seeing their part in both something that was successful and, most importantly, when something didn't work, the why and how they personally impacted that outcome, either from their actions or inactions. Just because something was successful in the past doesn't mean it will be the next time, especially without putting in the work required to make it that way. So this is how they build resilience in 4-H. It's not only all the successes, but it's also when things don't go well, and they have that system of support with caring adults to figure it out and to find out, well, what didn't work? How can we make it better next time? Here's another one from another adult volunteer. Seeing the youth grow in leadership, seeing them being successful in their project areas, this is what's most meaningful to them. Having them try something new in the different areas and to be successful, encouraging the youth to be the best that they can be. Community involvement, community service that we are asked to help with or lead the project, the event. Seeing the club members grow up, and then when they have their own kids, have them join the club or 4-H in general. So a lot of 4-H is very family driven. So you see families, multiple generations of families who have been in 4-H and as members, and then later as volunteers. So in conclusion, and I'm just about at 30 minutes, I can see, we believe very strongly that 4-H has a lot to contribute in terms of building resilience in young people. However, we must acknowledge that there are still many questions that we don't know. In particular, how does 4-H promote resilience? We don't really have an answer to that question yet. We also don't know which program experiences, because 4-H is very vast. There's many different types of activities and projects and programs that go on within 4-H. We don't know exactly which programs or experiences are most effective for developing resilience. In other words, how the Thrive model is activated, and especially activated for different youth. We have youth from multiple backgrounds in 4-H. It's such a big program. It serves young people from all different backgrounds. And so we don't really know who benefits the most and why. And especially in terms of resilience, who does the best or who does well in terms of acquiring this resilience that is so important today. Okay, so I'm out of time, and I just want to thank everyone for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor. Actually, we still have time if you want to proceed.
Well, that's my last slide. So thank you very much.
Okay, then. Okay, what an interesting topic. Thank you for sharing your knowledge about this 4-H model. I'm sure that audience would like to have some question because it is an intriguing discussion, I'm sure. But before that, we are going to listen to another distinguished speakers, Professor Haslinda Abdullah from Universiti Putra Malaysia. Professor Haslinda, the time is yours.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Distinguished our MC, Dr. Maya, Prof. Latif. Hi. Long time no see.
Hi.
Yeah, Prof. Maya and Dr. Zikri. I feel honored, to be able to present today on the topic of building resilient societies, the role of education and youth empowerment in Malaysia. Basically, I just take the main topic and I tune it into Malaysian context. But before I delve into the topic that I'm going to, present, I would love to make some comments with regards to Prof. Latif presentation just now. It's not commenting your presentation, Prof. You talk about climate anxiety, and I just get this grant entitled Climate Anxiety among Youth at the Affected Area in Malaysia. So it's very in line with what you have been concerning about. And of late, with regards to the news in Malaysia, we are having these issues on sexual grooming, about abang bas, if you know that term. And but surprisingly, when I read the comments, of netizen, I realized that most of us do not realize how scary sexual grooming is. And some of them is supporting the persons who did that. And then that shows that how ignorant our society is. And when we talk about building resilient societies and focusing on education as well as youth empowerment, it's a very in thing. And there's another case recently, it's still hot case in Malaysia with regards to the previous Arkam group, that have been developing to another, they renamed it into GISBH. And the recent news is very unpleasant to be heard, whereby they've been talking about gay activities in the school, in that area. So this topic is very important to discuss today. So with regards to the topic, I'm going to talk about the background on youth empowerment, roughly a little bit history, Prof. Latif. It's not that I'm going to bore you with the history, but I think it is important for us to know how does this youth empowerment in Malaysia grow, and how Malaysia has successfully, in a way, developed this youth empowerment process. Okay, so if you look at the slides now, wait, let me put it in a huge figure. Okay, fine. Youth empowerment, basically, it has been, over the years, driven by various social, economic, and political factors. So it started in 1957 to 1970s, and it starts with nation building, addressing socioeconomic issues, and establishing of Malaysian Youth Council in 1959. Although I have to admit that MYC currently is a kind of, how do I point it? MYC with the current situation now, they are not that active with regards to the issues, even the hot issues that what I've been mentioning before, is not being addressed by the group, which I think they have to. Okay, and then it goes to the new economic policy, NEP, from 1971. And it introduced to address economic inequalities and promote socioeconomic development, in which on this part, when we talk about economic inequalities, they highlight about youth in this part. But still, after 53 years, we are still, the progress is not that much, I believe. Youth Development Program, 1970s, 1980s, various programs were introduced to focus on vocational training, leadership development, and entrepreneurship, which I think when you look at the flow, it is very, we have to be proud of it, And youth participation, there goes the Youth Participation Act in 1972. So this act encourages youth involvement in community activities and governance, setting the stage for greater youth engagement in national development. With regard to this act, which I feel, proud of, because I also involved, not during this, when they developed this act, but the revision of the act. I do involve in the revision of the act. So by having this act, I think it is important for us to realize how Malaysian government realize the importance to empower our youth. There goes, the time, and then modernization and expansion on this is between 1990s to 2000s, in which youth and sports development is during that time. And during that time, the government intensified efforts to promote sports and youth development. And the National Sports Council, and the National Sports Council. So these two, basically, youth, the National Sports Council and NSC, is highlighting on the importance of youth to be involved in sports. And I also involved in one study under WADA on positive prevention with regards to anti-doping issue. It is currently still in progress. And then youth empowerment programs in 2000, various empowerment initiatives were launched, including entrepreneurship programs and leadership training. I realized during this 2000 until 2015, we developed, or there's a number of startup programs by the government in different agencies. For example, it's not only being put under Ministry of Youth, but under different agencies too. For example, MIDE, or not MIDE, MDEC, and several other agencies, right? And with regards to recent developments, and from 2010 until present, we have youth policies and strategies, 2012, and youth entrepreneurship and innovation, 2010s, and digital and social media, 2010s and present. I think on this matter, digital and social media, it is of on and off, but currently it is being highlighted, especially now we are under AI era, yeah. I just watched yesterday on this one movie. I can't remember the exact name, but it's a Korean series about how AI interact the life of our daily life, and how it affect our youngsters, right? And the recent policy initiative to 2020-2021 is focusing on post-normal era, which is, we have COVID in 2020, and currently we are still in pandemic era. I believe we are still in pandemic era. So these are the challenges that we need to face with regards to empowering our youth. I think this issue is cut across the region. And I also realized the impact of COVID-19 on our youth is very critical, especially on education, employment. And now we have this, the rapid development of artificial intelligence. And I think the effect is not only towards our youth, but to us as a parents. Prof. Latif just now highlights how the role of the elders, on this. And I also realized that the rapid changes has taken us quite I don't know whether it's abruptly or it's a kind of shock. You know, we do not know what to expect from AI, from this digital thingy, and it also relates to mental health issues because the information is so, there's so many information and we don't know the real information and whatnot, you know. Even as an adult, you know, I sometimes question whether this information is right or not, you know, and then how to verify it, and then so we are supposed to, we should imagine how does this affect to our children. They might not realize that those information, you know, that so many unfiltered information has certain effect towards them, but we as an adult should realize that. And there goes the statistic of mental health and the recent research on between Ministry of Youth and UNICEF on mental health of Malaysian youth. It shows quite an alarming data in which 1 out of 4, 1 out of 5 have anxiety, 1 out of 3, if I'm not mistaken, if we are talking about anxiety. And 1 out of 5, if we are talking about mental health. Stress is okay, you know, but those depression and then the anxiety numbers is quite alarming. You know, we have COVID, we have been quarantined, and then there goes the cabin syndrome, and we do not do anything much, so we watch this handphone. And then there's so many things at the handphone. So there goes, and which I believe we need to really understand how does these things goes and how to be flexible in terms of understanding it and to adjust towards it as an adult. No, I'm not talking about youth. I'm talking about an adult. Because if we do not understand the situation, how are we going to guide them? Or how are we going to, hold their hands together? Resilient society. Now, strengthening the education system. With the current government, with the current Minister of Education, I realized they are trying to, because education has been affected a lot during COVID-19. And it is a challenge to readjust, you know, on the curriculum and how those curriculum are able to raise our young children to be a resilient person. Yeah. So this is where I believe the integration, you know, integrate resilience training is important to be blend in our curriculum development. We are talking about problems solving, critical thinking, emotional intelligence, and recent initiative is to reform the current curriculum where it is needed. So the ministry has opened the ideas, okay, open for ideas among us, among communities to share their views with regards of the what would be the best for our next generation, which I think is good, but how do they carve it into our education system is yet to be seen. Yeah. And then under that curriculum development, we are supposed to adapt to future needs. We are talking about post-normal era, which is expect the unexpected, you know. So their skills need to be emphasized, you know, digital literacy, creativity, adaptability, But I also believe when we talk about curriculum development, we should be flexible. Yeah. I know if those in curriculum groups, they wouldn't agree with me. The recent 3 to 4 days ago, I attended this post-normal talk, and the person highlighted about how important for us to be flexible with regards to our education system and whatnot. And I asked him, with regards to the higher education and in terms of learning, how flexible can we be? And he mentioned that it has to be taken slowly. We have to be flexible, but we do not have to do it in a rush. So, step by step, basically. And there goes enhancement teaching methods. I also realized with regards to this, to promote interactive learning, and all these things, we have to have a good infrastructure in which the current government is seriously highlighting about it. But also teachers training. I realized that teachers training, I do emphasize in several of my talks at the programs with teachers, with educationist group. I highlight how important for our teachers to be well trained, especially, for example, if you are talking about sex education, some of our teachers are not being able to deliver the content as what it is supposed to be, and some of them can't even mention the words because they consider it as a very sensitive, and they put it in another symbol, for example, and that might not be a good way of teaching, especially about sexual education, because it might lead the students towards different understanding. So teachers training is very important, and I believe if we want to develop a good next generation, a very resilient next generation, our teachers need to be empowered. Yeah, and access to quality education, this is very important, and we do realize during COVID-19 how it's very difficult, especially for those who in the rural area, with regards to Wi-Fi and whatnot. They are unable to get a good access towards Wi-Fi. Therefore, they are unable to get educated through online education. So there goes statistics. If I'm not mistaken, last year 10,000 drop out. No, 10,000 do not take SPM. SPM is secondary exam, yeah, before you go into tertiary education. So which is very important. And support for vulnerable groups. This is also important under access of quality education. There are so many vulnerable groups. So therefore, implement programs to support marginalized communities and students with special needs. I think in this part, there needs to be a good policy, and that being followed up thoroughly. Otherwise, policy but not being given fully attention, then it means nothing. Second, fostering youth empowerment. Okay. Under this, I'm going to highlight about leadership development, skill building, and civic engagement, which the last one I think is very, very important. Leadership development, I think in Malaysia, we have lots of this kind of leadership programs. Under the current Minister Hanayo, somehow she does not, she support leadership program, but she do not want it to be so elites, okay? Therefore, under these leadership programs, we have to establish programs that develop skills such as public speaking. And we realize this after COVID-19, our youngsters, they are not ready to be face-to-face with others. They do not know how to speak with others. They are able to speak inside their handphone while they are playing games, you know, but when they have to meet face-to-face, they kind of, you know, oh my goodness. They have trouble in terms of public speaking. And also decision making as well as team management. So these are the things, and I realized this not only based on data or statistics, because I've got children of my own, which is you know, within this range of age. So I realized they do not prefer at all teamwork, because they say that you know, they can do well on their own. So, and it also being materialized in our work context, okay, and mentorship opportunities in which connect young people with mentor, and that this is where we in IPSAS, we also are currently developing a module on youth adult supervision. We are 80% ready, another 2% yet to be ready. So this mentorship opportunities is very important. And I realize under Ministry of Youth in Malaysia, they do have this kind of programs. But of course, not many people will get the opportunities to have this. But this type of leadership, for example, Perdana program, Perdana internship program, whereby our youngsters have been attached to minister. Okay, so a few of students being attached with a minister. And also skill building, entrepreneurship training, vocational training. I realized of late after the COVID-19, 2023 onwards, we are actively focusing on this because we realize there are an issue of employability, especially after COVID-19. So we have extensively worked together with China on this vocational training, and there are numbers, batches of youngsters who are interested in this skill were sent to China to have this to be trained over there. The last one, civic engagement, community projects, you know, encourage youth in community service and development projects. I especially would emphasize for those who reach me and they are having mental health issue and whatnot, I would seriously suggest them to be involved in these community projects. I realize these community projects do develop resiliency among our youngsters. It might not be totally resilient, but at least they feel appreciated, they feel they are needed, you know, because mental health issue is also about self-esteem, some of it, yeah. And youth councils, so these are the things that I think Malaysian is already established, you know, this youth council. The third one, promoting mental health and well-being, definitely. I mean, this is especially nowadays, we realize that our youngsters is having issues on this. And I remember when my daughter told me that her colleague, only 6 months into working situation, have to go to therapists because she couldn't handle the stress, yeah. So awareness program, I mean, we have been talking about this, and I believe the whole world has been talking about this, but still, these awareness programs is very much needed. But yet also I need to emphasize that this awareness program, counseling service or not, it has to be tailor-made it shouldn't be one size fit all, because the mental health issue is different within different groups. For example, T20, the elites groups, their issues is different from the one who is, involved with poverty and whatnot. So I believe these are the things that we have to be carefully craft, so that the programs that we create is focused and tailored to the groups that we are supposed to deal with. Therefore, we should be able to help them in terms of building their resilience. And then, of course, resiliency training, workshops and seminars. Of course, I do realize that after having training of mental health myself, I went to Turkey and I went to several programs on this mental health awareness and whatnot. I realized that before this, people are saying that what are there? I mean, if you are just when we talk about motivation, how do I call it? Motivation seminars and whatnot. It's just a talk, but trust me, words can heal. And I realized this too when we conduct programs, and after the programs, the individual reached some of us, and then it meant a lot actually for them. Yeah. So these workshops and seminars is important to also build our youngsters' resilience. Yeah, okay. And also life skill development. We are not talking about how to get A's, how to get 10 A's, how to get 20 A's. But we are talking about we have to train them how to be assertive, not to be aggressive, but to be assertive, and how to manage their emotion. I also realized of late, especially with the, uncertainty of our climate, the mood, the emotion of our people, not only youngsters, is very fluctuate. And some of them, and if they do not able to manage their emotion, wow, things can escalate from normal towards extreme behavior. And I do wrote on this, especially during this hot season. There are higher cases of that relates to emotional imbalance. Encouraging innovation and adaptability. For under this, I'm going to talk about support for innovation and embracing technology. When we talk about support for innovation, I realize how important is words at school, especially, when we encourage, in Malaysia, we encourage STEMs education, science, technology, engineering, what is it? Engineering, STEM, and math, something like that, okay? But I remember there is one case, one of the students told me that he tried to create something, and show to the headmaster. And the words from the headmaster is very important. He said that, oh, you can get this thing at the Shopee, and there are so many varieties that we can get from Shopee. That kind of words being mentioned. And this student, Form 3, Form 4 student is trying to, they are very excited. They are very to show that they're inventing something. But this kind of words, that's why I said just now, it's very important. The workshop on motivation and whatnot is very important, because words can kill and words can heal. So this innovation hubs is very important, but also those who manage those innovation and whatnot need to be educated on how to deal with young people, how to encourage young people, how to appreciate. even small things, yeah. And grants and competitions is very important for them to be exposed to. This is important to be exposed to competitions and to feel how to embrace failure if they fail, and to feel grateful if they win. This is the process is important in terms of developing a resilience young generation. So when we talk about support for innovation, these are the things that we want to have. It's not only the platform, but also the support, the emotional supports that they need. And also we are talking about embracing technology, digital literacy, provide training in digital skills and technology, as well as online learning platforms. I believe with regards to online learning platforms, the infrastructure, again, the material things, you know, and of course, these are the things that we are talking about, the gap, okay, between the have and do not have, yeah. Whereby we know that those who live in urban area, not all, have the access, the opportunities and whatnot. So these are the things that we need to clearly address and, you know, handle it wisely on this issue. Last, building partnerships and collaborations. I think with regards to youth empowerment and then education, this government and private sector collaboration is very much needed. And we are talking about, for example, universities and industry. Last 2 weeks, we have this conference on community with regards to food security in 5.0 in industry 5.0, and we realized that there is a need that this close collaboration between universities, government agencies, and also private sector to work together. If we are serious, and we know that, I don't know about Indonesia. I believe Indonesia and Thailand is very much well ready with regards to food security. But how well are we in terms of this, in terms of the collaboration between these three? That is yet to be explored. And when I talk about food security, we also realize that it affects the youngsters when, if I'm not mistaken, they mentioned during the keynote, the person highlighted that 1 out of 5 is having issues with regards to malnutrition. So this collaboration is very much needed. When we talk about malnutrition, we are talking about our next generation, and we are talking about their resiliency. If they are not well ready, well fed and whatnot, how are they going to be to face the world? Am I too excited to face the world? Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, and corporate social responsibility in encouraging business to invest in education and youth development as CSR strategies. These are the things that I think the government should play their role in terms of encouraging businesses. And I think in Malaysia, we have these startup programs that encourage our youngsters. But how resilient is the program? I think we need to really do an impact study. And lastly, community involvement, local initiative, as well as volunteerism. Again, I highlight about volunteerism, since when we promote volunteer program opportunities for young people, so they not only have different experience from what they are having now, but they also realize that they mean something to somebody else, which is very important. And this is where I relate back to mental health. And also this monitoring and evaluation, assessing impact and data-driven decision making. Knowing we in a university, we highlighted on the regular evaluations, any programs, especially nowadays, especially during post-normal era, whether it is impactful or not, and is it, and how flexible are we with regards to our programs, yeah, and feedback mechanism. And we realize our youngsters now is different. They are different from baby boomers. They are different from me, Gen X, and millennial. But does that difference mean it is negative? I don't think so. But again, when we talk about monitoring and evaluation, we have to involve these youngsters to together with us measure, what does it mean by successful, for example, because according to baby boomers, if you have job, for example, stable job, is okay. This amount of salary, then you are success. But for these youngsters, having a permanent job with that, that kind of salary, certain amount of salary is very suffocating. So we have to involve youngsters when we draft all these things. And lastly, data-driven decision making. Of course, data collection and adapt strategies, meaning that we have to be flexible again. So way forward and conclusion, based on my explanation just now, you should have realized that when we want to talk about building resilience, we have to be flexible, especially in nowadays era, and be relevant to the context of what we are talking about. And of course, I highlight just now on collaboration. There is a need of strong network with regards to us as an adult and also the youngsters. And lastly, we have to highlight local strength when we talk about how to build resiliency. I still trust, the local wisdom is much more practical when we deal about being resilient. And finally, when we talk about building resiliency among our youngsters and also with regards to on education, we have to be ready. So this foresight thinking need to be implemented in our way of thinking. And also we have to be agile in the way we manage things. Otherwise, it can be frustrating process, And again, just like I mentioned before, to do this foresight thinking and agile management, we have to be realistic and flexible. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Haslinda, for the very enlightening presentation. We can now see what is actually going on youth development in Malaysia. And I'd like to highlight what you said, that words does matter. So it can actually heal or kill. Yes, especially today that I think today with the youth now, with the young generation now is different from a previous generation. Some call them as a strawberry generation, in which it looks beautiful from the outside, but then it's rotten easily. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, now it's time for question and answer session. So I've seen from the chat that there is one question addressed to Professor Latif or Professor Krauss. How would you like to be addressed, Professor? Professor Latif or Professor Krauss?
Either one is fine. You can call me Latif, is fine.
Okay, Professor Latif. Question from Rahmat, you have answered by giving the questioner several links, but perhaps you would like to explain to us how to include the 4-H in our curriculum. Our
Yeah, I
curriculum
wasn't.
means Indonesian curriculum.
Yeah, I'm assuming that's what it means. Yeah, I didn't mean to answer the question through the links. I was just providing the links as resources. There's a ton of 4-H curricula online. Many of them are free. You can download them. You can also purchase them. But 4-H is a very flexible program. In fact, we have 4-H programming in schools as well. So teachers also act as volunteers and do 4-H programs. So you can get a 4-H curricula. It's pretty much self-explanatory. You can get it, and you can, if you're a teacher, you can do it as a program either in school. We have what are called spin clubs in schools where they do 4-H programming, or you can do it as an after-school activity. And if possible, you can involve the parents as volunteers as well. And so, yeah, those curricula you can really implement them anywhere. But schools is a very popular place, but it's usually as a sort of extra or co-curricular activity. Yeah.
Okay, would it be possible to be developed in the community itself?
Absolutely. Yeah. Our most popular format of program is they're called community clubs. And so those are community-based clubs comprised of youth and parents and other volunteers from the community. And so they meet a community club meeting once a month, and then in addition to that, they have their separate project meetings. So young people choose which projects they want to work on, and then they work on those in smaller groups. But the community clubs meet every month, and then they'll also do community service activities and stuff like that, fundraisers and all kinds of stuff. So it is very much a community-based model. Yep. So it can be in community, it can be in schools. We have 4-H programs in prisons. We have 4-H programs in universities. It really runs the gamut.
Okay, I see. That's very interesting. Okay, next, let's go to the next question from Lugita. Lugita gives a very long introduction. Okay, but then the question is, it's just to achieve that these are challenges. Okay, how do you involve young people in your action planning? And how do you address the challenges? So she is from Cianjur, and then in her community, there's what's so called as Rembuk Pemuda Desa. So in Indonesia, usually we have kind of like a youth community, but then what do you say it? It's the sustainability is not very good. So members come and go like in a very rapid time. Like the next thing you know, there are no members in the community. So the question is that, I think question from Lugita is that, okay, how do you involve young people? How to actually involve them and stay in the community? How do you address the challenges?
Prof, you want to go first?
Okay. On this matter, I would share my experience. I mean, when you work or you deal with youngsters, you really have to be sincere. When I say sincere, it needs to be transpired in your behavior and in your activities with them. So when the question is how to let them involve, with the activities and whatnot. That's why it is important for you to, when you make a decision, for example, in masjid or surau, you call them, not call them to help you in what to make that, to increase the number of person to pray in the area, but call them on what are the activities they would like to have in the mosque, within the mosque area, and acknowledge their ideas. Slowly, I think they will realize that you are sincere in your decision to let them involve with you. I mean, you can say that you appreciate them, you highlight them, and you want them to be involved. But if you do not put it into action, then it means nothing. Yeah. So I believe this is very important for you to walk the talk. And also, normally when they are giving ideas or when they are highlighting issues, sometimes they just want you to know. Sometimes they do not want an opinion at all. I realized this through mistakes because I would love to give ideas based on my experience, you know. But I realized that is wrong. So you have to learn from all this, you know. Sometimes they just want you to listen, because they already know how to solve it. They just you know, to be a good listener. That is one of the, and then when you talk about how to face the challenge, yeah, that someday there's no youth in your community. This is what's happening in Japan nowadays, you know, and in so many other areas too. When you talk about challenges, it cannot be solved one way. Just like I told you just now, it has to be two ways traffic. So two ways traffic, discuss, and then do try and error, because there is no one solution for all. Just like I told you before, there's no one size that fit all. That would be my idea, my opinion.
Okay, it needs to be tailored to their needs,
Mhm.
Professor. Okay, thank you. How about Professor Latif?
Yeah, I would echo what Prof. Haslinda just mentioned. I would just add a few things. I think, Prof, your reference to being sincere, I would just sort of coin that as more about being authentic, especially when you're, you know, to say you want to do meaningful youth participation is not easy. And you have to be authentic, and really from the top down, there has to be an effort to be authentic and really wanting young people to have voice, and to be partners and collaborators in that decision-making process. And a lot of times adults start off saying they want to do that, and then as soon as young people start to really participate in very real ways, adults often get very uncomfortable, and then they kind of take the power back. Different way. And they do that, sometimes it's not even consciously, sometimes it's subconsciously or unconsciously, but they do that. And then young people will disengage, and they'll see it as not an authentic opportunity, or, you know, oh, the adults weren't serious about it or something like that. So I think it's really about, you know, if you want to build a collaborative, then it's about, like Prof mentioned, about meeting their needs. So first, really understanding their needs, and not only their needs, but also the adults' needs. So it's a community effort. You approach it as a group, as a community, and we're all part of one community. And youth and adult voices are equal in terms of their merit and their weight, and their importance in the decision-making process. And that has to be stated at the very outset, and it has to be made clear to everyone on board. And then following through a process where, you know, you maintain that authenticity. And Alina, you also have to be aware that young people, sometimes they are not fully able to or capable of participating in the same way as adults, because they don't have the skills and the experience. So in some cases, young people need training in certain areas that they may not, know how to do certain things when it comes to those decision-making processes. So being sensitive to that, also their needs in terms of what they need to be able to participate like adults in those kinds of forums and settings. That's also very important. And so it's really a lot of relationship building and being authentic. And it has to come from leadership, from top down. If not, it rarely works, to be honest.
Okay, thank you. So I guess I would like to highlight that it needs to be organic. I mean,
Yeah,
like,
good word. Good word.
yeah, that's the word. Yeah, it needs to be organic. You cannot just make an intervention,
Yeah.
but it needs to be authentic, organic, and it needs to be in line with what they need. Okay, thank you very much. Now, do we have another question? Let's see from the chat box. Okay, before we go to the next question, Professor Haslinda and Professor Latif, we all talk about youth development, but then and earlier Professor Latif talked about youthhood. But is there any range of age what we a working definition for our discussion today? In which age range of age that we call them as a youth or youngsters? Yeah.
Prof. Latif, you can answer that first.
No, well, it depends on the national and cultural setting. Of course, I worked in Malaysia for many years. And so are we at 15 to 30 still over there, Prof?
15 to 30, and the Hanayo mentioned 1st of January 2026, it will be heads on.
Okay, so 15 to 30.
Mhm.
In the US, typically youth in 4-H, youth is 8 to 18. So it's much younger.
8? Seriously, 8?
8 to 18, yeah. If we start 4-H starts at 8. But that's not to say that, young people in their early 20s are not considered youth. It's just that there's no formal age legal definition in the US like there is in Malaysia and other countries. But yeah, for 4-H purposes, it's 8 to 18. So it's very different. We're dealing mostly with older children and early and later adolescents, whereas emerging adults and sort of young adults don't really they're sort of a separate, they're going to adulthood more than youth in the US context. So a little different.
Okay. How about in Malaysia, Professor?
Malaysia, just like Prof. Latif mentioned just now, currently we are into this 15 to 30. But all the programs, activities has started. But with regards to leadership, we are going to start in January 2026. But this process is not an easy process too, and it takes a brave minister to announce that, because if I'm not mistaken, 3 or 4 ministers mentioned about 15 to 30, because before this is 15 to 40.
15 to 40.
Yeah, 15 to 40. I mean, the evolution is that the first one, there is no age limit. If you're 70, you're still youth. And then later, 15 to 40. So even that one, the youth worker, academician like us, we have to fight for it. And the recent one, 15 to 30, but only will be fully used in 2026.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's quite a different conception of youth, from 2 different countries.
Yeah.
I should be in Malaysia, so I can be considered as a young generation. Okay.
Oh, so you are still 30, yeah?
Oh, I'm 17, 20 years ago.
70, mashallah.
Okay, now let's go to the next question. The next question is from Sadawi. I want to ask one question, sir. With the rise of mental health issues such as anxiety, depression among youth globally, how can educational system and youth empowerment programs better support young people in developing emotional resilience and coping mechanism for today's challenge?
Emotional resilience,
Yeah, that's a
And
difficult
coping-
question, I guess.
and coping
Well, that was
strategies.
the whole point of the presentations just now. That was so
Yeah.
literally represent what we just presented.
Yeah.
And I think, Prof, actually, you did a better job of looking at that on a more macro level. You sort of took it from a bird's eye view perspective of all the different sort of systems that can contribute to resilience, you know, at a sort of macro level. I was focusing more on a single program, but you know, yeah, it's such a big question. I think anything that focuses on building supportive and you know, a lot of it is relationship building, connection, getting young people out of this alienation rut, which a lot of young people are in this age. They're so isolated and alienated, not only from other people, but from themselves. And in fact, there's a lot of research now on body disassociation and the rise of gender identity crisis and how it relates to body disassociation. In other words, young people are so disassociated from their own bodies. There's this lack of internal cohesion, which is leading to a lot of the gender identity issues. So there's just so much, you know, it's an age where it's an age of young people are alienated in just so many different ways, you know. And unfortunately, I think our educational systems, like the formal educational systems, are not helping much because they also work in a way that doesn't really support that. You know, it's not really a community-based or community-focused system that encourages community in any real way. Young people are placed under a lot of stress to succeed and to achieve academically with very little concern for their well-being, you know, their psychological well-being, their social well-being. I don't think those things are really taken into account much in terms of schooling nowadays, unfortunately. You know, so when you talk about educational system, I think we've got to look at education in the broader sense, and look at the role that community and family play in the education of young people, you know, rather than just looking at the schools, because the schools, I don't think are doing it, honestly. I think they're failing in so many ways.
True. I think the whole ecosystem need to contribute towards this. And I realize the issue is not only among youngsters, it is us. We do not know how to deal with the recent post-normal era and the AI and whatnot. And then we try to blame it on our youngsters in a way, you know. It is, in fact, we are the one who not knowing what we are doing. That's why I say that the whole ecosystems need to be in line if you are seriously want to address this issue. Because last time when I went to Jakarta and I get and a few places in Indonesia, I realized that the latest issues in Indonesia is about a family who commit suicide. Is increasing. It's not only individual, family who commit suicide. So when you talk about emotional, how to manage emotion and whatnot, I think more discussions need to be done. You know, some people may say that, oh, you only discuss but no action. Actually, you know, when we deal with youngsters, we have to have a good discussion for us to understand what's going on and to be able to suggest anything. And we also have to, I realize, because I know I have 6 children, so discussion is very, very important. And Prof. Latif, I'm having another type of Anis, you know, who's also taking law, and wow, the challenge is so different. And I realized me not knowing anything. So what I did is that I just talked to him. I talked to him and then I share my experience as that I do not know how to handle this because this is my first experience and whatnot. But I share my experience with other people's children. Somehow it makes sense to him. So for me, when you want to deal with youngsters, there's a lot of discussion to be done among ourselves and between us and within us, you know. I think that would be the good way.
I have to agree with Professor Haslinda that perhaps we, as not a young generation, perhaps we contribute to this problem because perhaps we are now part of the people who considered as a policymaker and that affect youngster today. And also the impact of COVID. So earlier, Professor Haslinda mentioned that so the drawback from COVID, the negative impact of COVID, it has always been learning loss. But actually, as Professor Haslinda mentioned, it's not only learning loss. So students who are not able to communicate with other person, that will include adult, and they can be misunderstood. And then after the COVID, and then the next thing is the rise of AI. So
Yeah.
that also contribute to the way we can take care of young learners. Professor, do you agree that to a certain extent AI can actually become barriers for students or youth resilience? What's your opinion?
Can I answer that questions? I
Yeah.
remember I wrote an article on hikikomori. Hikikomori is a youngsters. This is a concept that being termed in Japan, whereby youngsters, you know, just stay on their own, be on their own, you know, and what the Japan government is trying to do is one of the program that they try to do to improve this situation is that they are using metaverse. Because these youngsters, they are not able to face a person face to face because they are being isolated for so many years, some of them more than 10 years, you know. So they are trying to do it using metaverse, which is AI. So they have this one lady, I don't know why, but they are using a girl or a woman to stare at the person, and they just talk.
As a training tool.
Yeah, as a training tool. But in that article, I mentioned about our sixth sense. When we want to, that one is good as a for a first phase to handle the issue, but I still believe in the touch. You know, using our sixth sense. For example, we go and involve with agriculture. We go and involve with animals. At least, you know, that would be interesting.
Okay, thank you. Professor Latif, what's your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, AI is pretty scary. The thing about AI is that AI doesn't really care about people. It does not have the capacity to care about people. So it can, people are so enthralled with AI and impressed by the speed at which it does things and the tasks that it can complete. But at the end of the day, it doesn't give a damn about you. So, I mean, when you talk about like emotional resilience and young people's emotional needs and so forth, AI is not going to help at all with that. Because it can't. It's not what it's for. All right. So, it's funny how people on the one hand, we see AI as this thing that's going to destroy us. On the other hand, they see it as a panacea to all the problems that we have. It's going to solve all our problems also. So is it either going to destroy us or solve all our problems? So, you get people on both sides of the coin. And it's kind of funny, actually, the fact that, these extremes and what AI is going to do. But I don't think AI is the answer when it comes to helping young people become more resilient. I don't think at all. In fact, probably less so because in too many ways it acts as a crutch where young people don't have to go through the hard work of struggling. For example, I mean, in my university, they're encouraging us to use AI in a lot of different ways in our classes and so forth. And even generative AI, which is where young people are allowed to actually create content through using AI. So there's certain assignments that we can create and we can use that incorporates generative AI into them. However, there has to be a point to that assignment. There has to be something that they're going to learn by using the generative AI. But if they are learning, if they're doing everything using AI and they're not going through the difficult work where that causes them to grow and to build resilience, then it could have a negative effect on their ability to be resilient, you know. So, I mean, who's to say? We don't really know at this point, but it is something that I think is something we have to be careful of.
Yeah. So I guess we agree that it can become barriers in building resilience.
And so we have to learn how to use it in productive ways.
Yeah.
Yes, wisely. We have to use it wisely
Yes.
because
Yeah.
somehow it reduces confidence and critical thinking. AI.
Yeah. And then I've also seen like some professors here in the fields of like medical technology, engineering, they're using it actually in very critical ways. And what they do is they give the assignments that the students have to do is the students have to create the prompts for the AI to generate certain output. And so the critical thinking is all in how they design the prompts for the AI. So it's very interesting. In those fields, it works very well because of the nature of what they're working with, right? Whereas in other fields, you know, I don't know, it doesn't seem to work the same way. So, you know, again, it's how you use it in what circumstances and like you said, wisely, you know, using it wisely. So
Yes. In my field, it turns the assessment process in my class become traditional. So long before this, the rise of AI, we can just give them assignment, asking about their opinion, but then we can no longer trust them. So let's go to traditional assessment in which they have the test and then I need to monitor them closely in the class. So yeah. Okay, now we go to another question. This is in Bahasa Indonesia. So the moderator needs to be a translator now.
Okay, I already translated it using Google Translate. So.
Oh, great. Belum mereka langsung bekerja kenapa seperti itu jawabannya tidak banyak yang membahas. Oke, dan juga kurang bahkan tidak semua tersebut menurut Bapak Ibu apa cara untuk memiliki masalah itu bagaimana mengatasinya. Okay, so this person, what's her name? Amira. Amira has, based on her teaching practice experience, she asked her student whether or not they would like to continue to university. And then her students answer at that time is that they could not continue studying in university, and although they want to, but they could not because they have to work, and then dan juga kurang bahkan tidak semangat, and as a consequences they are not motivated to learn in high school. Perhaps the context is in high school. So the problem here is that because students could not because her students could not continue their study, so they are not motivated to learn in high school, in which I think the class that she taught. So her question is how to overcome such problems, how to overcome students who are not motivated to learn as they could not continue their study. That's the question. Okay, who's going to answer first, Professor Latif or Professor Haslinda?
Or the Prof Haslinda, because that sounds like a very similar issue as in Malaysia. Yes, am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's true, cut across borders. You know, what happened during COVID, it affect economically. So look when we look at Maslow, you know, the segitiga Maslow, the triangle, that Maslow triangle. Of course, you have to fulfill your basic needs first. So but as a teacher, as a you are motivated too. As an academician, you are motivated too. So you just have to expose them to reality, you know. Of course, okay, you can work as a Grab driver, as a salesperson and whatnot. But if you but once you reach, for example, 30 years old, you know, and you get married and whatnot, you should realize that your the cost of living and the needs is much more higher. So which cannot be sufficiently met by being a Grab driver. You know, you have to have education, at least a degree, you know. But at the same time, when we talk about education, just like what Prof. Latif mentioned, there are so many types of education. And nowadays you can easily get certificate using, you know, online teaching and online courses and whatnot. So you just have to expose the students of the consequences of not having education and having education. But also you have to expose to them, there's so many varieties of program that you can learn. It might not be in tertiary level, but there are other skills that they can acquire. But the main point is that go and reach and, you know, achieve as high as you can. But we do not undermine those who have, you know, they have to help their parents and to fulfill their basic needs. But we have to accept that. That's the reality.
Okay, so as a teacher, we need to keep motivating these students because it is important for them to continue their study. Okay, thank you, Professor Haslinda. What about Professor Latif?
Yeah, I would concur with Prof. Haslinda. I would also add that I think it's important. I think the researcher in me would say, well, I would like to know why they think that to begin with. Like what information are they basing that on? Where are they getting their information? And then the other thing is, why do they have what we would probably say, or what I would like to know is, why do they have these kinds of, I don't want to sound derogatory, but low expectations for themselves? In other words, do they not think they're capable of that? Do they not think that they have what it takes to, you know, advance in their education? You know, I think there's a lot of questions that we don't really know the answers to in relation to that level of decision making where they're at, you know, and why are they making those decisions. So again, I think we jump to conclusions and we say, oh, they just want fast money and blah, blah, blah. But we don't really know why. I mean, we don't know what information they're basing that on and where they're getting the information. Because like here, we could easily point to data that shows that young people who have bachelor's degrees, and bachelor's degrees are not, you know, what they used to be in terms of what they do for people after they graduate in terms of jobs and so forth. But young people with bachelor's degrees still do significantly better than those without. Right. And I'm sure that's probably true in Malaysia and Indonesia as well. I don't know. I'm just guessing. But, you know, so basic data like that, you know, show that to them and say, and ask them what they think about it. Like, do you realize that if you have, you know, so I just don't know what kind of information they're basing that on, really.
Maybe future collaborative study, Prof. Latif. Indonesia, Malaysia, US.
Yeah, sounds good.
I'm in.
Joint study.
Let's do it.
I'm in. Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Professor Haslinda and Professor Latif. It has been a great discussion. It has been an enlightening presentation. The last, Professor Haslinda and Professor Latif, would you like to give a final thought to close our discussion?
Go ahead, Prof.
Okay. I just want to highlight that we have to be open-minded with regards to our youngsters' future, our youngsters' program and whatnot, because we ourselves is once young, and we have a lot of disagreement with our seniors. So by having all these youth worker in this group, I believe we have to change that, so that we are more acceptable towards their ideas, and be frank to our own self that we make mistakes too.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we can be the agent of change.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. How about you, Professor Latif?
Yeah, I want to thank you very much for inviting me, and it's an honor as always to attend a conference there. I keep saying there, even though I'm not there. But yeah, it's been great, and thank you so much. I would just say from my many years working in youth development, and I've been very fortunate in that I've had experiences in two different sides of the world, very different cultures, but something that's really common and so fundamental to young people's well-being, especially when it comes to resilience, is relationships. And so anything that builds good, strong, healthy, supportive relationships, I think is something that we have to really pay attention to. It sounds simplistic, but it's not. In fact, Harvard just concluded, the current project director of Harvard's 80-year study on adult development, where they studied a cohort of over 600 men over 80 years to try and understand what makes a good life. What they found was that among all the different factors, and there's so many different factors that they came in contact with over the course of 80 years, what they found was most important was strong, healthy relationships. That's what mattered when it came to a good life, what they call a good life, or a fulfilling and happy life. And I think if you look at it, I mean, that's really, especially with COVID, I mean, that's one of the most fundamental things that broke down was our social networks, our community networks, our sense of connection. Here, young people, you can see it's visible the lack of comfort they have when interacting with other people. It's like Americans don't even know how to make eye contact anymore. Like I went away for 20 years and I came back and I was like, what the heck happened? Like, where did America go? Things are so different. They don't know how to make eye contact anymore, which they're so uncomfortable in social situations, and that is definitely going to affect how you relate to other people, how you build relationships, and so it's just such a critical component to it all. And so I think resilience, a lot of it stems from that. So
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay, my final words would be like, I remember that in 2010, Posner has once said that education is the remedy to all problems in society. So if we want the youth to overcome their challenges in the current situation, then we need to empower them through education. It is with that education, with that empowerment, they can actually become resilient and thrive in Professor Latif said. Thank you very much, Professor Haslinda and Professor Latif. Let's give them a big applause. I'm Maya Daifianti, signing out from your being moderator. See you. Thank you so much.
Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you, Prof. Latif. Thank you, Prof. Haslinda.
Thank you, Myla.
Yes.
Thank
Good
you.
seeing
Thank you, our speakers, for such enriching presentation, to our moderator for leading the session, and to all participants for your thoughtful questions and engagement. And we would like to present certificates to both speaker and moderator. Here's the certificate of appreciation for both speakers and also moderator. For the first one, for Professor Stephen Krauss as a keynote speaker. The second one is to Professor Haslinda Abdullah.
This is new normal.
New normal.
I turn it off.
right, as a keynote speaker. And then the next one is for our moderator, Dr. Maya Devianti, our esteemed colleague, the same faculty as me.
Great job, Maya. Great job.
Thank you so much. Great presenter.
Thank you very much, all. We will now take a short break to reconvene for our next session, which is going to be in the 1 p.m. Jakarta time. And I would like to invite all of you again to join our second session with the link provided in the chat box. And if you haven't filled the attending link, you may fill the attending link so you can get the certificate. And for the certificate, would you please check your spam or junk mail, because it seems that it's being as I forgot, as a junk and spam. That's all from me as an MC. Thank you very much. I'm Zikri Rahmat Ramadan. See you next session.
See you. Thank you so much.